Most people misunderstand what actually makes someone unforgettable in a close, intimate connection. They assume it's about looks, confidence, or learning the right moves, but psychology paints a very different picture. Real attraction doesn't start in the body, it starts in the mind, and more importantly, in the emotional space two people create together. When someone feels deeply comfortable with you, when they feel understood without having to explain everything, something powerful happens. Their guard drops, their nervous system relaxes, and in that state, even small moments start to feel meaningful. That's why some people are remembered long after they are gone, not because of anything loud or dramatic, but because of how safe, calm, and seen they made the other person feel. Men, even if they don't say it out loud, are surprisingly observant in these moments. They notice emotional presence. They notice how someone responds under pressure, how they handle closeness, how they react to silence, and how naturally they connect without forcing anything. It's not about performance, it's about energy, awareness, and emotional flow. Science supports this too. Studies in psychology show that emotional intelligence, empathy, and attunement play a far bigger role in physical and emotional satisfaction than any technical factor. In simple terms, people don't remember perfection. They remember connection. And this is where things get interesting, because the signs of being naturally good in bed are not what most people expect. They are subtle behaviors, quiet patterns, and emotional habits that reveal confidence without ego, comfort without effort, and attraction without force. So in this breakdown, we're going to explore those deeper signals, the ones men can sense instantly, but rarely know how to explain. And by the end, you'll realize it was never about trying harder, it was always about connecting better. One of the most powerful and often misunderstood signs of deep attraction is emotional safety. It doesn't sound exciting on the surface, but in psychology, it is one of the strongest foundations of intimacy. Because before anything physical or romantic can feel meaningful, the nervous system needs to feel safe. And when a person feels safe with you, everything else naturally becomes deeper, easier, and more connected. Emotional safety is not about being overly soft or always agreeing with someone. It's about how you make the other person feel in your presence. Do they feel judged, rushed, or controlled? Or do they feel accepted, calm, and free to be themselves without pretending? The difference between these two experiences is what separates surface-level attraction from something truly memorable. Men especially notice this in a quiet way. They may not always express it directly, but they feel it instantly. When they are around someone who doesn't pressure them, doesn't overanalyze them, and doesn't force emotional reactions, something inside them relaxes. That relaxation creates trust. And trust is the real gateway to deeper emotional and physical connection. From a psychological point of view, the brain is constantly scanning for emotional threat or emotional comfort. If someone feels emotionally safe, the body lowers its defenses. The breathing slows down, the tension reduces, and the mind stops overthinking. In that state, connection becomes natural instead of forced. This is why some people can sit in silence with someone and still feel completely connected. It's not about words, it's about emotional grounding. You create emotional safety through very subtle behaviors. The way you listen without interrupting, the way you don't rush someone to open up, the way you respond without judgment when they share something personal. Even your tone of voice and facial expressions send signals of acceptance or discomfort, and people pick up on these signals faster than they realize. Another important part of emotional safety is consistency. When your energy is calm and stable, people feel secure around you, but when your reactions are unpredictable or overly intense, it creates emotional tension. That tension blocks connection, even if attraction is there. Consistency builds trust, and trust builds depth. This is also where many people go wrong. They think being interesting is more important than being safe. But psychology shows the opposite. The human mind is naturally drawn to what feels emotionally secure. Excitement may attract attention, but safety creates attachment. And this is why people who are emotionally safe become unforgettable in intimate settings. They are not trying to impress. They are not trying to perform. They are simply present. and that presence allows the other person to relax into their true self. In the end, emotional safety is not about doing more. It's about removing pressure. It's about creating a space where someone feels they don't need to hide, perform, or pretend. Because when a person feels completely safe with you, they don't just remember the moment, they remember how it felt to be fully themselves. One of the clearest psychological signs of emotional and intimate intelligence is the ability to respond instead of react. At first, this might sound like a small difference in wording, but in real human connection, it changes everything. Because reacting is impulsive, emotional, and often self-centered, but responding is aware, calm, and connected to the moment rather than the ego. And in closeness between two people, this difference becomes extremely noticeable. When someone reacts, they are usually driven by their own immediate emotions. They interrupt, overthink, assume, or try to control the situation based on how they feel in that exact second. This creates tension, even if it's unintentional. The other person starts to feel like they need to be careful, like they are walking on emotional eggshells. And slowly, the natural flow of connection starts to break. But when someone responds instead of reacting, the energy feels completely different. There is a sense of patience in them. They take a moment to understand what is actually happening before they speak or act. This creates a feeling of emotional balance in the interaction. The other person feels heard, not rushed, understood, not judged, and this is where deeper attraction quietly begins to grow. Men, in particular, tend to notice this quality even if they cannot explain it in detail. They may not say, "She responds" instead of reacts, but they feel the difference in how calm or safe the interaction is. A woman who responds with awareness instead of emotional impulsiveness creates a space where a man feels more relaxed, more open, and less guarded. And that emotional relaxation is what allows real connection to form. Psychologically, this is tied to emotional regulation, the ability to manage your internal state before expressing it outwardly. People who have strong emotional regulation are not disconnected or cold. In fact, they are often more emotionally present because they are not overwhelmed by their own reactions. They can actually pay attention to the other person's tone, body language, and emotional state without being distracted by their own internal noise. This kind of presence is deeply attractive because it creates stability, and stability is something the human brain naturally seeks in close relationships. When someone is emotionally stable in their responses, it signals maturity, trustworthiness, and safety. The interaction feels smooth instead of chaotic, and over time, that smoothness builds a quiet but powerful sense of connection. Another important layer here is emotional timing. People who respond well know when to speak and when to stay silent. They don't rush to fill every gap. They don't over-explain every moment. Instead, they allow the interaction to breathe. This breathing space is where comfort grows. It gives both people room to feel, think, and connect naturally without pressure. And perhaps the most powerful part of responding instead of reacting is that it removes ego from the interaction. There is no need to win the moment or prove a point emotionally. Instead, the focus shifts to understanding. And when someone feels understood, they naturally become more open. They let their guard down without even realizing it. In the end, this quality is not about being perfect or emotionless. It's about awareness. It's about choosing connection over impulse, understanding over assumption, and calm presence over emotional chaos. Because in real human closeness, the person who can stay present and respond with clarity is often the one who creates the deepest and most lasting impact without even trying to. One of the most quietly powerful signs of emotional and intimate awareness is the ability to notice small signals. Not the obvious things people say out loud, but the subtle shifts in energy, tone, body language, and silence. In psychology, this is often linked to emotional perception, the ability to read what is not directly expressed. And in close human connection, this skill changes everything. Most people listen to respond, but very few listen to understand. That difference is where emotional depth begins. When someone is truly paying attention, they notice the small changes that others miss. A slight pause in speech, a shift in eye contact, a change in breathing. Even the way someone's energy becomes quieter or more distant for a moment. These are not dramatic signals, but they carry a lot of meaning. In intimate or emotionally close settings, these small signals become even more important. People rarely express everything directly. Instead, they communicate through subtle cues. And someone who is emotionally attuned can pick up on these cues naturally. They don't need everything explained. They can sense when something feels comfortable, when something feels uncertain, or when something needs more space. Men, even if they don't consciously analyze it, feel this kind of awareness deeply. When they are with someone who notices their small shifts, like when they become quieter, more thoughtful, or slightly withdrawn, they feel understood on a level that goes beyond words. It creates a sense that they are not invisible in the interaction, that their internal world is being seen even when they are not speaking about it. Psychologically, this is tied to attentional sensitivity. It's the ability to process nonverbal information and emotional cues in real time. People who have this ability tend to create stronger emotional bonds because they respond to the real moment rather than just the spoken words. And when someone feels that level of awareness from another person, they naturally become more open and connected. This also plays a big role in building trust. When a person realizes that you notice their subtle changes without them having to explain everything, they start to feel safe. They feel emotionally held in a way, not controlled, not judged, but understood. And that feeling creates comfort, which slowly deepens attraction over time. Another important aspect is timing. Paying attention to small signals is not just about noticing them, it's about knowing how to respond to them. Sometimes the right response is to engage gently. Other times it's to give space. And sometimes it's simply to stay present without saying anything at all. This emotional timing shows maturity and awareness, and it prevents misunderstandings before they even begin. People who lack this sensitivity often miss emotional cues and end up creating distance without realizing it. They might speak too much when silence is needed, or stay silent when reassurance is required. But those who are attentive to small signals move differently. They adapt naturally to the emotional rhythm of the moment, and that adaptability is deeply attractive in a quiet, unspoken way, because it shows that you are not just focused on yourself, but also tuned in to the other person's experience. It creates a feeling of harmony in the interaction, where both people feel emotionally matched instead of emotionally disconnected. In the end, paying attention to small signals is not about overthinking or analyzing every detail. It's about presence. It's about being fully in the moment and allowing yourself to notice what most people overlook. Because in human connection, the smallest signals often carry the biggest truths, and the person who can see them is the one who truly understands connection at a deeper level. One of the most underrated signs of emotional maturity and deep connection is how comfortable you are with silence. Most people think connection is built through constant talking, laughter, or filling every gap with words, but psychology shows something very different. Real closeness is often revealed in the moments where nothing is being said at all. And how two people handle those quiet moments says a lot about the depth of their connection. Silence makes many people uncomfortable because it forces them to sit with themselves. It creates a space where there is no distraction, no performance, and no escape into conversation. For some, this feels awkward or even stressful. They rush to fill the silence, sometimes saying things just to avoid the discomfort. But in doing so, they unintentionally create pressure in the interaction. That pressure can block natural emotional flow. On the other hand, someone who is comfortable with silence brings a completely different energy into the space. They don't feel the need to constantly prove anything or entertain the moment. They are simply present. And that presence creates a calm environment where the other person also feels allowed to relax. In that shared stillness, a different kind of connection begins to form, one that is deeper than words. Men often notice this quality in a subtle way. When they are with someone who doesn't panic in silence, who doesn't rush to fill every gap, they feel less pressure to perform socially or emotionally. It creates a sense of ease. They can just be themselves without feeling like they need to keep the conversation alive at all times. And that ease is quietly powerful in building attraction. From a psychological perspective, comfort with silence is closely tied to emotional security and self-assurance. It shows that a person is not dependent on external stimulation to feel okay. They are grounded enough in themselves to sit in stillness without discomfort. This is a sign of inner stability, and inner stability is something people naturally find reassuring in close relationships. Silence also allows emotional processing to happen. When there is no rush to speak, both people have time to actually feel the moment. They can observe each other's presence, energy, and expressions in a more natural way. This creates a sense of depth that constant conversation often disrupts. Sometimes what is not said carries more emotional weight than what is said. Another important aspect is trust. When two people can sit in silence without feeling awkward, it signals a level of comfort and acceptance. It means there is no fear of judgment in that space, no pressure to perform or impress. Just acceptance of the moment as it is. And that kind of acceptance is one of the strongest foundations of emotional intimacy. People who are uncomfortable with silence often try too hard to control the interaction. But those who are at ease with it allow the connection to unfold naturally. They understand that not every moment needs to be filled and not every pause needs to be explained. Sometimes, the most meaningful connection happens in the stillness between words. In a deeper sense, being comfortable with silence shows that you are not afraid of connection without noise. You are not dependent on constant validation or stimulation. Instead, you are confident enough to just exist in the moment with another person. And that quiet confidence is often felt more strongly than anything spoken. In the end, silence is not empty. It is full of presence, awareness, and emotional depth. And the people who can share it without discomfort are often the ones who create the most natural, relaxed, and unforgettable connections, because they understand that sometimes the strongest form of communication is simply being there without needing to say a word. One of the deepest signs of emotional confidence and natural attraction is this simple shift. You stop trying to impress and you start focusing on connection. On the surface, it sounds small, but in real human psychology, it changes the entire energy between two people. Because the moment someone is trying too hard to be liked, the connection stops feeling real and starts feeling like a performance. When a person tries to impress, their attention is no longer fully present in the moment. Instead, they are constantly thinking about how they are being seen, how they sound, how they look, what the other person might think of them. This creates an invisible pressure in the interaction. Even if everything looks normal on the outside, the energy feels slightly forced. And people can sense that, even if they can't explain it. But when someone shifts from impressing to connecting, everything changes. The focus is no longer, how do I appear, but how do we feel together in this moment? This shift removes pressure from both sides. The interaction becomes lighter, more natural, and more emotionally open. There is no need to perform, no need to prove worth, and no need to force chemistry. It just flows. Men, especially in emotional and intimate dynamics, respond strongly to this kind of energy. When they feel that someone is not trying to win them over or impress them, but instead is simply present with them, something interesting happens. They relax. And when a person relaxes, their real personality starts to show. That's where genuine attraction begins, not from performance, but from authenticity. From a psychological point of view, trying to impress is linked to external validation. It means your sense of value is tied to how others respond to you. This creates tension because you are always monitoring the reaction instead of experiencing the moment. But connection-focused behavior comes from internal security. It means you are already comfortable with who you are, so you don't need to overcompensate. And this internal security is deeply attractive, not because it is loud or attention-seeking, but because it feels stable. People naturally feel more comfortable around those who are not trying to control how they are perceived. It creates emotional safety, where both people can just exist without pressure. Another important part of this is emotional authenticity. When you are not trying to impress, you are more likely to speak, act, and respond in a way that is real to you. You are not filtering every moment through a "what will they think of me" lens. This makes your presence more genuine, and authenticity is something the human brain recognizes and responds to very quickly. Connoction also allows for better emotional timing. Instead of overthinking every word or gesture, you become more natural in your responses. You listen more deeply, you respond more honestly, and you allow the interaction to guide itself instead of forcing it in a certain direction. This creates a rhythm that feels effortless and real. People who focus on impressing often exhaust the emotional space, but people who focus on connecting create comfort. They make the other person feel like they don't need to play a role either. And that mutual relaxation is where real attraction quietly builds. In the end, the shift from impressing to connecting is not about doing less. It's about being more present. It's about removing ego from the interaction and allowing genuine human experience to happen. Because the truth is simple. People don't form deep memories about who tried the hardest. They remember who felt the most real, the most present, and the easiest to be themselves around. At the end of the day, being good in bed or deeply attractive in any emotional sense has very little to do with technique and everything to do with presence. It's about how you make someone feel when they are with you, emotionally, mentally, and in those quiet in-between moments that most people ignore. When you make someone feel safe without forcing it, when you respond instead of react, when you notice the small details others miss, when you are comfortable in silence, and when you stop trying to impress and simply connect, that is where real chemistry lives. Not the loud kind, not the show-off kind, but the kind that stays in someone's memory long after the moment is gone. Psychology is clear on this. People don't bond through perfection, they bond through emotional comfort and authenticity. The nervous system remembers how relaxed or tense it felt around someone far more than anything that was said, and that is why some connections feel natural, effortless, and deeply magnetic without any explanation. So instead of asking, "Am I doing enough?" the better question is, "Am I making this person feel seen, safe, and understood?" Because that is what actually builds attraction that lasts. If this breakdown helped you see connection in a deeper way, don't just scroll past it. Think about it. Apply it in your daily interactions, because the way you connect with people shapes the way they remember you.